My brother stole my startup idea and became a millionaire. So I secretly took everything back and left him with nothing. The idea came to me during one of those sleepless nights when you're lying in bed, your mind racing with possibilities. It was October 2019, and I'd been struggling to make ends meet as a freelance software developer. The gig economy was brutal, payments were irregular, and I was tired of constantly hustling for the next project. That's when it hit me. What if there was a platform that could intelligently match freelancers with projects based not just on skills, but on working styles, time zones, and personality compatibility? Something that used AI to create perfect partnerships between clients and contractors, reducing the endless back and forth of traditional freelancing platforms. I called it sync work. For weeks, I worked on the concept obsessively. I sketched wireframes, wrote detailed user stories, researched competitors, and even built a basic prototype. The more I developed the idea, the more convinced I became that this could be revolutionary. This wasn't just another job board, it was a complete reimagining of how remote work could function. The only person I shared my excitement with was my older brother, Marcus. Marcus and I had always been close, despite our different paths in life. While I'd chosen the uncertain world of freelance coding, he'd climbed the corporate ladder at a tech consulting firm. He had the business acumen I lacked, the network I needed, and most importantly, the capital to make things happen. When I showed him my prototype in his downtown apartment that November evening, his eyes lit up with the same excitement I'd been feeling. "This is incredible, Jamie," he said, scrolling through my demo on his laptop. "The AI matching algorithm alone could disrupt the entire industry. Have you thought about funding? About scaling?" I hadn't, not really. I was still in the dreaming phase, still perfecting the technical aspects. I figured I'd bootstrap it first, get some users, prove the concept. Marcus shook his head. "You're thinking too small. This needs venture capital, proper marketing, a real business development strategy. You could be the next Upwork, but better." We talked for hours that night. Marcus offered to help with the business side, creating a proper pitch deck, reaching out to his contacts in the VC world, handling the incorporation and legal stuff that made my head spin. I was grateful. Having my brother's support felt like the missing piece I hadn't known I needed. "Partners?" he asked, extending his hand. "Partners," I agreed, shaking it. That handshake would haunt me for the next 3 years. The first red flag should have been how quickly Marcus took control. Within a week, he'd scheduled meetings with 3 different investment groups. Within 2 weeks, he'd filed incorporation papers for SyncWork Technologies, with himself listed as CEO and me as CTO. When I questioned the titles, he brushed off my concerns. "It's just for the investors," he said. "They need to see traditional corporate structure. You're still the technical founder, the brain behind this whole thing." I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. So when he suggested I let him handle the investor presentations while I focused on improving the platform, I agreed. When he said the legal paperwork was too complex for me to worry about, I signed where he told me to sign. When he explained that his equity stake needed to be larger because he was taking on more risk by leaving his corporate job, I didn't argue. The funding came through in March 2020, just as the pandemic was reshaping the entire employment landscape. Remote work was suddenly not just trendy, but necessary, and our timing couldn't have been better. We raised $2.3 million in Series A funding, and suddenly SyncWork was a real company with real employees and a real office. But somewhere in the whirlwind of success, I started to feel like a stranger in my own creation. Marcus hired a development team without consulting me. He made product decisions that contradicted my original vision. When I pushed back, he'd smile that patient smile he'd perfected since childhood and explain why my concerns weren't strategically aligned with our growth objectives. Slowly, methodically, I was being pushed out of my own company. The final blow came during our Series B funding round in late 2021. SyncWork had grown to over 200,000 active users and was generating serious revenue. The company I dreamed up in my tiny apartment was now valued at $47 million. We were featured in TechCrunch, Forbes, and Wired. Marcus was being interviewed as the visionary founder who had revolutionized freelance work, and I was about to be fired. "It's not personal, Jamie. Marcus said during what he'd called a strategic planning meeting, but was actually my termination. The board feels we need more experienced technical leadership as we scale. Your equity will vest over time, of course, and we're prepared to offer a generous severance package. I stared at my brother across the conference table in the office that used to feel like home. The same brother who'd shared a bedroom with me for 10 years, who'd helped me with homework, who'd been the best man at my wedding. He was wearing a $3,000 suit and looking at me like I was just another business problem to solve. "This was my idea," I said quietly. "Ideas are cheap," he replied. "Execution is everything, and the execution that got us here happened because I made the hard decisions you weren't willing to make." I signed the papers because I didn't have a choice. I took the severance because I needed to eat. And I watched from the outside as my brother became a tech celebrity, as SyncWork went public in 2022, as he bought a mansion in the hills and gave interviews about his entrepreneurial journey. But Marcus had made one crucial mistake. He'd never changed the passwords to the original development servers. I'd built SyncWorks' first infrastructure myself on cloud servers I'd personally configured. When the company grew and Marcus hired his new development team, they'd migrated to enterprise-grade systems, but the original servers were still running as backup systems. More importantly, they still contained all the original code, all the proprietary algorithms, and all the data from our first 50,000 users. For months after being fired, I told myself I was done with SyncWork, done with Marcus, done with the whole mess. I started a new company, a simpler project management tool for small teams. It was steady work, paid the bills, but it felt like settling for a black and white photograph when you'd once painted in vivid colors. Then, in January 2023, I read an interview where Marcus claimed he'd always known that AI-powered job matching was the future of work, that the idea had come to him during his years in corporate consulting. He didn't mention me once. In his version of history, I didn't exist. That's when I decided to take back what was mine. The plan took 6 months to execute. I couldn't just steal the code. That would be obvious theft, and Marcus had lawyers who could crush me. Instead, I had to be smarter. I had to make it look like a series of unfortunate technical failures. First, I created my own platform, Workflow, a seemingly unrelated productivity tool for remote teams. I launched it quietly, building a small but loyal user base through targeted marketing to freelancers who were frustrated with existing platforms. Workflow looked completely different from SyncWork, had different branding, different features. But buried in its code was the same AI matching algorithm I'd originally developed, refined and improved over months of careful work. Second, I began documenting everything I could find about SyncWorks' early development. My original sketches, email threads from 2019, version control logs from the servers Marcus had forgotten about. I wasn't planning to sue. Lawsuits are public and expensive and uncertain. I was planning something much more elegant. The key was SyncWorks' greatest strength, its AI algorithm. Marcus's new development team had built impressive features around my original core technology, but they'd never fully understood how the matching system worked. They'd treated it like a black box, integrating with it, but never rewriting it. This meant that when the algorithm started producing progressively worse matches, when I began feeding it subtle corruptions through the old backup servers that were still syncing data, they couldn't figure out why. User satisfaction dropped. Complaints increased. The magic that had made SyncWorks special began to fade, and no one could explain why. Marcus hired consultants, brought in new developers, even tried to poach engineers from Google and Facebook. But you can't fix a problem you don't understand. And they didn't understand that the heart of their system was being systematically destroyed by its original creator. Meanwhile, workflow was growing. Every frustrated SyncWork user who left became a potential workflow customer. My platform worked flawlessly because it was built on the original, uncorrupted version of the algorithm, the version I'd been improving in secret for over a year. By October 2023, SyncWorks' user base had dropped by 60%. Their stock price had fallen from a high of $89 per share to $12. Marcus was fighting desperately to save the company, taking bridge loans, making promises to investors, but the fundamental product was failing, and he couldn't figure out why. Workflow, meanwhile, had grown to 150,000 active users and had attracted Series A funding of $8 million. Tech blogs were calling it the SyncWork killer, praising its superior matching capabilities and user experience. I was being interviewed as an innovative newcomer in the space, careful never to mention my history with SyncWork. The final step came in December. I'd planned to let SyncWork die slowly, to watch Marcus lose everything gradually, but then he made one last mistake. He reached out to me. "Jamie," he said when he called, his voice strained in a way I'd never heard before. "I know things ended badly between us, but I need your help. Something's wrong with the core algorithm, and you built the original system. Could you take a look? As a consultant, of course. We'd pay your standard rate." The audacity was breathtaking. After stealing my company, erasing me from its history, and treating me like a disposable employee, he wanted me to save him. "I'm sorry, Marcus," I said. "I'm too busy with my own company to take on consulting work." There was a long pause. Then, "Your own company?" "Workflow. Maybe you've heard of it. We're doing pretty well in the freelancer matching space." Another pause, longer this time. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head. That's that's interesting timing," he said carefully. "Yes," I agreed. "It is." He never called back. SyncWork filed for bankruptcy in February 2024. The company that had once been valued at nearly $200 million was sold for parts, its user base, and remaining assets acquired by a larger competitor for $3.2 million. Marcus lost everything. His stock options became worthless, his mansion went into foreclosure, and his reputation in the tech world was destroyed. Workflow, meanwhile, completed its Series B funding round in March, raising $25 million at a $150 million valuation. We now have over 400,000 active users and are expanding into enterprise markets. I'm the CEO this time. And the equity structure ensures that what happened to me can never happen to anyone else on my team. I never told Marcus what I'd done. There was no dramatic confrontation, no moment of revelation where I explained how I'd systematically destroyed his company. He probably suspects, but he can't prove anything, and at this point, it doesn't matter. The tech world has moved on, and SyncWork is just another cautionary tale about promising startups that couldn't execute. But sometimes, late at night, when I can't sleep, I think about that handshake in his apartment 4 years ago. I think about the brother who taught me to ride a bike, who helped me move apartments, who was supposed to be my partner in building something amazing together. I think about how family is supposed to mean something more than just shared genetics and childhood memories. Then I think about the interview where he erased me from history, about the moment he fired me from my own company, about the casual way he destroyed my life for his own advancement. And I remember that justice isn't always about courts and lawyers and public vindication. Sometimes justice is about patience and skill and understanding that the best revenge is not just success. It's making sure that the person who betrayed you understands exactly what they lost when they chose greed over loyalty. Marcus could have been a millionaire and still had his brother. Instead, he chose to be a cautionary tale with nothing at all. I regret that it came to this, but I don't regret what I did.